you join me here at Stourbridge Junction Station, a principal station on the Snow Hill lines in and around Birmingham, but is also home to Britain's and one of Europe's shortest branch lines. Now, a few weeks ago I made a video on the Class 333, which I described as one of Britain's weirdest trains, but somehow I completely forgot about the Stourbridge shuttle and the Parry People Mover Class 139 train, which, well, is barely a train. So in today's video we're going to be looking at what is Britain's shortest branch line, 0.8 miles, between Stourbridge Junction and Stourbridge Town. We're going to be looking at that line, as well as the very fascinating train which runs along it, that is the Class 139 Parry People Mover train. So without further ado, let's firstly have a deep dive into the history of the line itself, from Stourbridge Junction to Stourbridge Town, before then looking at the rolling stock which runs on it. Before we do anything though, let's firstly have an overview. Stourbridge is a small market town 11 miles northwest of Birmingham, and is most known for its part in the Industrial Revolution, specifically glass making, being on the edge of the Black Country. Today, the town is known for, well, not a lot to be honest. It's the birthplace of footballer Jude Bellingham, and is also believed to be part of the influence for J.R.R. Tolkien's Mordor realm in The Lord of the Rings. Within people interested in the rail industry and trains like me, Stourbridge is known for being home to probably the UK's strangest railway line, the Stourbridge Town line, aka the Stourbridge Shuttle. This 0.8 long mile branch links Stourbridge Town to the junction station of the same name, where connections can be made towards Birmingham or Kidderminster and Worcester along the Snow Hill lines, including occasional Chiltern Railway services to London. The shuttle runs every 10 minutes, from around 6 AM to midnight Monday to Saturday, and every 15 minutes from around 10:15 to 8 PM on Sundays, making it one of the most frequent railway lines anywhere in Britain, let alone the West Midlands. Now though, let's have a deep dive into the history of this line. The line between Stourbridge Junction and Stourbridge Town dates from October 1879, when the Great Western Railway opened the line between Stourbridge Junction and just Stourbridge in the town centre for passenger services. A year later, freight services were opened to the nearby Stourbridge Canal Basin. The line, when originally opened, was fully double-tracked, and the actual station featured a full platform with full station building and canopy. The branch hasn't seen too many changes. Probably one of the biggest changes was in 1901, when Stourbridge Junction was completely rebuilt here to have 4 platforms. Currently 3 of those platforms are in use, with the branch thus being realigned. The branch has only closed once in its history, between 1915 and 1919, due to World War I economic wartime measures, with, following its reopening in 1919, Stourbridge Town being named Stourbridge Town. Previously, it was just called Stourbridge. In 1922, up to 46 services operated each direction per day, rising to 62 services by 1932, which represented around 3 or 4 trains per hour in each direction, and some of those trains even had first class, which is probably one of the shortest first class journeys you could ever take. The station at Stourbridge Town was originally a much grander affair. Even though it has always only been one platform, it did feature a much larger station building, it featured proper canopies, and was much more of a station than it is today. Today it's basically just a platform with a small building. There was also a full proper signal box opposite the station, which closed in 1935, when basically the line was formerly double-tracked, and then it was basically reduced to just 2 single tracks which ran alongside each other. So they were bi-directional single tracks, which meant that the signal box wasn't needed anymore. Steam trains continued into the mid-1950s, when old GWR flying banana rail cars began operations, which dated from 1933. These rail cars were in operation until the mid-1960s. In 1965, the old freight line towards the Canal Basin was closed, meaning that Stourbridge Town was just a stub branch line between the town station and Stourbridge Junction, which thus made it one of the shortest branch lines in Europe. But it is not the shortest, and we'll get onto that later in the video. Going into the 60s and 70s, Dr. Beeching listed this line several times for closure in his infamous Beeching Acts, but thanks to local campaigning, the line never actually closed and survived several attempts, including in late 1970, when British Rail were trying to save £30,000 a year by closing the line, but all these attempts failed. During this time, the 1959 Class 121 and Class 122 bubble cars were brought into use on the line, which replaced the old 1930s GWR rail cars. And in February of 1979, the old station was completely demolished. The station was moved a few hundred yards, I believe, southeast or eastward to allow for a new bus station to be constructed. And the new station was simply just a platform with a station building. Well, it didn't even have a station building, it was just a shelter. It was that basic. From the early 1990s, the old bubble cars were replaced by Class 153 single-carriage diesel multiple units. That was after several old diesel trains actually had overruns at the buffers, including in 1977, 1989 and 1990, with photos of these linked in the description below if you're interested. Perhaps one of the biggest changes in recent times was in 1994 when the station was again rebuilt to its current status. The platform was switched from one side to the other side of the track, and it regained a station building, although a much smaller station building, but it regained a ticket office as well, so the station is staffed, which is hilarious given how small it is. But yeah, it's a little bit more grander than it once was, but the platform here is still very basic, and it's only enough to fit 2 carriage trains, not that 2 carriage trains ever run. A new bus station was also built in 2012 over the site of the former bus station. This cost £7 million and is a pretty good bus station. It makes it a good link between bus and train, if I'm being honest with you. It's a good interchange here. Since reopening in 1994, the station has seen little. The line hasn't seen too much interesting changes, bar rolling stock, which we'll talk about later. However, the line was completely retracked and relaid in February of 2021, which replaced the old track, which dated as far back as like the mid-1900s or something. It was nearly 100 years old, so they had to relay the track, and I believe they did that in a handful of weeks. It was meant to take several months, but they managed to cut that time a lot thanks to quick work. So the track is pretty modern and pretty new, and also features one of the tightest curves anywhere in Britain on track. Anyway, you can hear that. Our train is coming in to take me back to Stourbridge Junction, and you can see it there traversing that extremely tight curve there. Now though, it's time to discuss whether the Stourbridge Town line is really the shortest branch line in Europe. Now, there is a pretty big misconception about this line. If you look online, you might see it being advertised as the shortest branch line anywhere in Europe, but this actually isn't true. Now, excuse me, but I will need to look at my phone for this, because this branch line is 0.8 miles long between Stourbridge Junction and Stourbridge Town, but the Friedrichshafen branch line, I don't know how to pronounce it. The Friedrichshafen branch line in southern Germany on the border of Austria is just 0.5 miles long, and that links the town station to the harbour station. That only gets a handful of trains per day. It's like once every 2 hours or something, and links to the ferries from Austria. So that is the shortest. That is 0.5 miles long. This is 0.8 miles. This is the shortest branch line in Britain. I believe it's one of the shortest in terms of just a shuttle service, which just runs back and forth each day. And it's definitely the most unique. The one in Germany uses proper trains, it's fully electrified, and it's just a small branch line, but with 2 big and normal stations on the end. But this branch line is definitely the most unique anywhere in Britain, and probably in Europe as well. And that brings us on to talking about the rolling stock, because these trains are pretty unique and pretty rare. There's only 2 of these anywhere in the world. Well, technically 3, but only 2 in operations, and they are here on the Stourbridge shuttle. They are the Class 139s, that was 139001, which is running today. We'll talk a little bit about these trains, but they are Parry People Movers. That is the company which made them, and that is the term for the trains. They're sort of an experimental design, which are only used here on the Stourbridge shuttle, and it's sort of because they're perfect for the Stourbridge shuttle. Now, we've already spoken about the previous rolling stock which was used on this line. It used conventional small rolling stock, small rail cars, and small diesel units such as the Class 153s. However, in the early 2000s, Central Trains were looking at potentially replacing the 153s which operated on this line because it was a waste of a perfectly good train. They wanted to free up the Class 153 to be used elsewhere on the Central Trains network, and they looked at a company called Parry People Movers, who were sort of advertising this railcar specifically built for small branch lines like the Stourbridge shuttle. John Parry founded the Parry People Movers company, and he built a temporary trial train called the Class 999, which was actually built in the early 2000s and late 90s, I believe, and had sort of been touring heritage rail lines to prove that the technology worked. I say technology because these trains aren't traditional diesel or electric trains. They're actually powered using flywheels. They use flywheel energy storage for traction and have small LPG engines. In 2002, the Class 999 was tested here on the Stourbridge branch line, and it was deemed a success. A rotating flywheel is used to store kinetic energy, which could then power the vehicle at a maximum of 2,500 RPM. The trains would basically use regenerative braking from Stourbridge Junction to Stourbridge Town, which was perfect for this line, because there's quite an incline from Stourbridge Town to Stourbridge Junction, so the train could store all that energy coming down to Stourbridge Town and then use it to power it back up. There is a small LPG engine in the back of it, which helps it to sort of gain power and gain momentum, but a lot of the power is done using a flywheel, so it's actually a very efficient train and doesn't use a lot of fuel. Central Trains began testing the Class 999 in 2006 on the branch line. They tested it on Sundays because historically the Stourbridge shuttle line never saw a Sunday service, so testing it on Sundays was the perfect opportunity, and it proved to be quite popular and was a reliable and pretty good train. Passengers liked it because it was extremely quirky. It also featured full level boarding, and well, reliability was the main thing and the main concern, and it definitely passed that test. The test was deemed such a success that they basically brought the Class 999 into full operations. It basically operated the Stourbridge shuttle line consistently for quite a while, and Central Trains recommended to add to the next franchise, the next West Midlands franchise renewal, for an order of these trains. So whoever was going to get the next franchise, Central Trains said that they should order 2 of these Parry people movers to properly run the service for the foreseeable future. And that's exactly what happened. When London Midland took over the West Midlands franchise, they ordered 2 Class 139s, which are going to be leased through Porterbrook, 139001 and 139002. They were given that numbering because the person who numbered them stated that they didn't deserve a number higher than the Pacer trains because they were so much smaller than the Pacer trains, and the Pacer trains were historically Class 141s, 142s, so they were given a number smaller than that, the 139, because they're so small and tiny. They were delivered a year or so late and entered service in March of 2009, with 139002 being the first train to enter service, with 139001 entering service in May, which also enabled the Class 999 test unit to finally be retired, and also allowed for full Sunday service. From this point onwards, the Stourbridge shuttle was born, and every 10-minute service from Stourbridge Junction to Stourbridge Town and back again, running every 10 minutes basically from Monday to Saturday, and every 15 minutes on the Sundays, giving Stourbridge Town a Sunday service for the first time in its history. The 139s do have less capacity than a 153, but because they run more frequently, that does mean that they are an overall increase in capacity. And I've spoken for so long that it's coming back in again over here. It literally doesn't take very long. That's been about 4 or 5 minutes and it's back again. So yeah, I think the drivers are going to get a bit peeved off at me by the time that I've finished recording this video. There it is in shot now. By 2015, shuttle services reached 107 times a day in each direction, which is just crazy for a branch line. It makes it one of the most regular passenger services anywhere in the UK, especially for a small branch line like this. Stourbridge doesn't have a big population, and to get a train every 10 minutes in each direction is quite a feat, especially for Stourbridge Town, which is just a tiny little station in the middle of a town centre. You would think, oh, maybe like every 20 minutes, but no, every 10 minutes. It's a really good service, and all the staff are absolutely lovely. Passenger figures have since skyrocketed, with an increase of 138% from 2002 to 2019, with a peak of 634,000 passengers using the service in the 2017 to 2018 period. The 139s are extremely reliable, with a 99.5% reliability being boasted in 2012. However, it does seem as though now that they're aging on and nearly 20 years old, they are getting a little less reliable. Some of the staff on board that last service were complaining that the revs were too high, and that it's been doing that since Saturday, and it's been getting progressively worse and worse and worse as the days have gone on. So maybe there are some aging and teething issues with these old trains. It doesn't help that, unfortunately, the Parry People's Movers Company no longer exists. Mr. Parry sadly died in February of 2023, and his company ceased operations after this. He had always wanted more of these People Parry movers to be brought into service, but unfortunately that never happened. They were tested on multiple other lines, but the 139 Parry People movers only exist here on the Stourbridge shuttle line. Mr. Parry had previously planned a subclass, the 139-1, which was going to be a much larger train, capable of running on conventional proper branch lines. This is a bit of a rarity of a tiny little branch line linking two stations, but the 139-1 was going to be larger and it was going to be able to run on proper branch lines, but unfortunately that never happened. There wasn't enough interest, and when there was interest in the mid-2010s, unfortunately due to franchise issues, the whole franchising system was basically completely redrawn in the mid-2010s, and that meant that any interest was sadly lost. So this is really a piece of history, a piece of Mr. Parry's endeavour to try and get these Parry People movers everywhere in the UK. That dream didn't happen, but his legacy lives on here in Stourbridge, of all places. The 139s transferred from London Midland to their successor West Midlands Railway in 2017, receiving a new livery and new interior maquette. The trains inside are extremely basic, feels more like a bus than a train. It literally is basically a bus on wheels. They've got level boarding though, which is great, and they're basic. They're not, not expecting aircon or plug sockets or tables for a 3-minute journey. It really is just sort of sit down, and by the time you've sat down, you're already at Stourbridge Town. The 139s are stored at a tiny little train shed, which is just behind me here at Stourbridge Junction. I believe they're swapped out every week or so. They usually swap out the 139s, obviously there's 2 of them, so they swap them out to give each one a fair run, and sometimes they get a crane and rotate them so that they can be used on both sides and get equal wear to ensure that there's no wear and tear on one half and not the other half, if that makes sense. It does feel as though the service is almost, it is like a bus service. It feels as though everybody knows everybody. When you get on, they say thank you at the end. When you get off, like you say thanks to the bus driver. It feels as though some of the staff really know the passengers, and it does feel like a community spirit line, which is really cute. It is also quite weird that there are quite a lot of staff on board. There are usually 2 staff, one at the front and one at the back. Because it's such a short branch line and they only have 2 minutes to turn around, it's actually cheaper and more effective to have 2 staff members, one in each cab at the end, which means that as soon as they get into Stourbridge Town, the other staff member takes controls and gets ready to go back again. So it means that there's always 2 staff on board. But today there's about 5 staff on board. I believe there's 2 or 3 mechanics looking at the train, and there's the 2 drivers in each end, which is a bit strange. Sometimes there were more staff than passengers, but yeah, it's definitely an experience. If you ever are in and around the Birmingham area, Stourbridge is a half-an-hour train from Birmingham, Moor Street and Snow Hill. I would fully recommend coming out and going on the Stourbridge shuttle, because it very much is an experience. The trains do both have names. 139-001, the train out at the moment, is called the Stourbridge Lion. The other train, 139-002, has the name George Station Cat, which was named in August 2025. If you don't know, George is a station cat here in Stourbridge. I have tried to look out for him, but I haven't seen him. He is sort of a famous celebrity in Stourbridge. Although Jude Bellingham is probably the most famous person to recently come out of Stourbridge, George the Station Cat is a close second. Now, one weird thing that I just wanted to point out before I end this video is that West Midlands Railway don't actually operate the Stourbridge shuttle. It's actually operated by a company called Pre-Metro Operations. They operate the service on behalf of West Midlands trains, and I don't really know why. I'm not sure why it's set up in this way, but I'm sure it's some logical reason. I don't know, if I'm being honest with you. If someone could let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear your thoughts. But we should also talk about the future of the Parry People Movers and the 139s. They're getting on a bit. They're 20, nearly 30 years old now, and it's about that time where you start to think about, what do we do with these ageing trains? They're such niche trains. I don't really know if there's any other company which make a train similar to it. I know the Coventry Very Light Rail company exists. Maybe you could use some similar sort of train to the Coventry Very Light Rail. But again, it's a very niche sort of specific train that only is used, once every 30 years for a very specific train line in Stourbridge. So I'm really not sure. Do they replace it with a conventional train, a new sort of battery electric one-carriage train maybe, or do they get another sort of railcar train system? Who knows? That's not for me to decide. With Great British Railways coming in, who knows what might happen to the Stourbridge shuttle. Just before I wrap up this video, I will go to the old station site. So let's go to Stourbridge Interchange, where the old Stourbridge Town used to be. So you join me here outside of Stourbridge Interchange. The bus station is just behind me, but I believe this wall here is where the former Stourbridge Town station was before it was relocated in the 1970s. Obviously, the bus station here is pretty new, built in the early mid-2000s, and replaced the old bus station which was here. But yes, the old Stourbridge Town station used to be just behind me here. It was moved on a bit since then though, and yeah, I think it's time to go back to Stourbridge Town to wrap up this video. Right, welcome back to Stourbridge Town. There's a train due in any minute now, so I will wrap up this video as I head back to Birmingham. I've always wanted to cover the Stourbridge shuttle line, and I never really had the time to do the research for it, but it's actually a very interesting line. Despite being only 0.8 miles long, it is by far the shortest branch line anywhere in Britain, and one of the shortest in Europe, but not the shortest. It runs probably some of the most interesting trains anywhere in the country, the Class 139 Parry People Movers, which also have a very interesting backstory, thanks to Mr. Parry. The trains run every 5 minutes, making it one of the most frequent rail services anywhere in the country, especially for a small town like Stourbridge. It is by far the most unique rail line that I have ever been on, and I'm glad that I finally covered it in a video. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If so, do subscribe, like the video, comment below your thoughts on the Stourbridge shuttle. Do you have any memories of the service before the 139s operated it? But here it is, 139-001, coming in to take you back to Stourbridge Junction. Thanks for watching, thanks to all my YouTube and Patreon members. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. And of course, a huge thank you to my YouTube and Patreon members, including first class members Aaron Barry, Crispin McKee, JBNEL, Phil Smith and Tom Kennedy. My business zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony James Moore, ARK, BK Gary, Connor Gregg, Clive Travelling Trains, Craig Mitchell 43, Daniel Burford, Dave CDF, Henry Joy, J Teco, Gally 11, Lewis C21, Martin Thomas, NJTE, Ollie D, OVTUG Alex, Pete Denton, Real, SZWL, Train Life GB, Tom Kennedy, Will Ho and Zach Renfrey, as well as my standard premium and standard class members. You can help support me from as little as 99 pence per month, or get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month. All your support means the absolute world to me and helps make videos like this one possible, so I all appreciate your support. Thank you. Once again, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Check out my Discord, Twitter, Blue Sky in the links in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.